Bonjour à toutes et à tous.
Hello, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really pleased to be here this afternoon for this eighth and last conference organized by Le Journal du Pneumatique, working with the Syndicat du Professionnel des Pneus. This will be dealing with the winter decree starting at 1st of November last year. Now, I'm sure you've all heard talk of this decree with an obligation to equip oneself for winter for all of these vehicles on the road, whether they be light or heavy goods vehicles in many départements with mountainous areas. Now, what is this new rule? Has it been accepted? And what do the professionals of the industry think about it now? And how do they prepare for it? So we've got two speakers today. Dominique Stempfel, president of the SPP, Tire Professional Syndicate. And hi, Stephanie de Compois, Marketing and Communications Director of Euromaster. Hello. Just to start, Dominique, maybe you could begin by giving us a few brief reminders of what this mountain law is for these new considerations, this recent law, recent years in the media. This talks a lot about equipment for the winter, but it's actually more far-reaching than the first Loi Montagne dates back to 1985 and had to do with development and protection of mountainous territories or land masses. Second law was voted in 2005, he said, adding more elements concerning the economy for touristic promotion of mountainous areas and jobs. In this 2016 law, there is another element that's been integrated, circulation in the mountainous valleys. Now, these mountainous areas are often fall victim to huge traffic jams when the snow falls, and this really creates a big plug in traffic in the mountains, and it's very costly to the local administrations because they have to send out rescue services, they have to open up their gymnasiums to people who are stuck on the road, and they have to host these people and feed them. So the mountain law that we're talking about today is only a portion of this overall law, and this basically has to do with what we call motricity, or engines in the valley. So I think France was one of the last countries to vote on this. No, it's not one of the last, but really the last one to set up a law on this. So all of the other bordering countries, in one way or another, have made winter tires obligatory. Spain, Italy, Switzerland, Germany, and Luxembourg. So we're just up-leveling this French legislation to fit with other bordering countries' legislation. Now, let's go more in detail on the details of this decree. Now, the mountain laws have to do with mountain areas, so we must remind you that 6 mountain chains, the Vosges, the Jura Mountains, the Alps, the Massif Central, the Pyrenees, and Corsican Mountains, so 48 different départements. And it was decided as well to ask the prefect of these regions to ask which towns were involved. So the départements that are involved with this general mountain law were the ones that had to do with tires, either fully or partially. Now, we really easily understand that in Savoie, the 2 Savoies, which really high mountain territories, they're fully concerned, but there are other départements that are partially mountainous and partially flatlands or plains. They are less concerned by all of the points of this law. Maybe the various départements. Yeah, there are a number of prefects who did not want their département to be involved in this. So today, the most recent information I have talks about 35 départements, which are totally or partially concerned. 13 others are not concerned at all. There's strange examples. We talk about Corsica. We know that Misavon mountain is 800, the pass is 800 meters high, but Sils is very much concerned. Another strange thing in this law, some towns are concerned partially on territories that cover both mountainous and other plains areas. So we've got this very complicated and unusual situation. So there are other regions where the prefects have decided the département we're not concerned. They have all latitude to trigger from time to time, depending on the weather, severe weather. They can trigger this law. They can decide that you have to equip your tires with special equipment from time to time. Now, if we look more at tires involved in this decree, the tires that are involved in this decree, well, the decree says users must be able to have anti-slippage equipment. So either special tires that are specially certified for winter purposes, or the possibility to use chains on the tires. We do defend this particular point. We believe that tires that are going to be on the road are much safer than chains that will be in the trunk of the car. Yes, to our next speaker, Stéphanie, we talk about winter tires, we talk about snow tires, they're different terms. Now, how can we not get all these things confused? Sure. Today, we're not talking about snow tires anymore. We talk about winter tires. That's what we do. And this is one of the signs of the ambiguity of this law, because when we say mountain, we think snow, but actually winter tires have special characteristics in them that are intrinsic to minus 7 degrees Celsius. Below 7 degrees, your summer tire no longer has the same qualities as in winter, as a winter tire. There's a special mix of plies and of materials in these winter tires. So this is going to help with braking and motricity. So as professionals, we talk about winter tires, not snow tires. That's why the mountain law, we talk about mountain chains, but also these flatter lands, the plains are concerned. There are regions of France that are not part of these 40 départements, but do have winter conditions with very low temperatures below 7 degrees. So winter tires there are quite useful. Yes, for the various départements, it's very important to point out that it's not just the people who live there. No, it's not just those who live there. It's also those who travel or to go there for leisure or other professional activities. And also it involves people who are crossing through. A person from Brittany who's going to Nice, who's going to go through the Massif Central, is going to have this equipment on his vehicle. And then we've got people who are on the edges of some of these areas, so they're also going to have to make sure that they have the right equipment to get to the town next door. It's a question of safety. This is really a road safety law, this mountain law. So that's why just confining it to mountainous areas is very much limiting, overly limiting. We're talking about holding the road and driving under good conditions in France, no matter where, in winter. So our legislation is now harmonizing with other European countries, but winter in France, we've experienced it before, and winter tires have this great function to improve road safety in winter. More in detail now on the subjects. Dominique, can you tell us a little bit about some of these vehicles involved? All vehicles are concerned. Tourists, passenger cars, and SUVs and off-the-road vehicles as well. Often we think that SUVs are good for all road conditions, but it's heavier, it's less maneuverable than a berline or a coupe, and actually it's more dangerous than just a simple old car. So to the opposite of what one thinks, an SUV really or a 4x4 really has to be well equipped. Also vans and camping cars and mobile homes. Now, this obligation of the legislation is either to equip the vehicle with special winter tires, 4 tires, not 2 tires, 4 tires is an absolute imperative, legal imperative, or to have special things such as tire socks or chains. Now, for heavier vehicles, coaches and buses. So they have to be equipped with 4 winter tires, 2 on the front axle or the drive axle, and then 2 on another axle, or else other anti-slippage systems that are on at least 2 tires. Now for trucks and lorries, this is more complicated. You have to really concentrate here. Heavy vehicles with no trailers have to either have 4 winter tires, 2 on the drive axis and 2 on the motor axis, or 2 on the steering axis and 2 or equipment. Now with trailers, whether it be in winter tires or not, they at least have to have the true drive axis at the true drive wheels that are equipped. So the hauliers were basically compliant with legislation, especially the trailerless ones, because all of these are 3 PMSF. Maybe we should talk about the labeling of these winter tires. We've got 2 labels, M+S, Morgan Stowe, PMSF, 3 PMSF. The N+S means that your tire is certified for winter to 2024, and then after that time, this tire will no longer be considered to be a winter tire. And of course, the tire manufacturers are really anticipating this innovation, and all the new trucks and lorries have 3 PMSF, so they are using the same tires. These are special winter tires, but they use them all year long. So what's going to come in with the mountain law is this obligation to have tire socks or tire chains in semi-trailers. This is going to be an obligation of this mountain law, and means that a haulier or a truck or a trailer truck needs to have these special systems on board in the vehicle. So there's a special certification for the tires, but also for these chains and for these socks. We must remind you of that. For the certification or standards, these are D26 or B26 that say that B26, that these signs that say B26 mean you have to put tires on your chains on your tires. But there's new legislation coming through Europe, and some been adapted in some countries. This EN 16662-1. This is going to arrive in France as well, this new legislation. You can't just put any old sock or chain on these tires and on these vehicles. So this was enforced about 3 weeks ago. Now, what's happening with this law right now on the ground? Oh, it's a little bit tough, this teething period, because the decree was voted in October 2020. Published in the official report, 22nd of November 2020, so we could consider that there was plenty of time to enforce it, to implement it. And we realized in September there was very little information that had come out, and the general public was not informed. We, at the syndicate, we also had to speak to the media, to talk to the prefect as well, to say that we were coming to the deadline and we've got to do something to inform users. There was another point as well that needed to be implemented. The entry and exit of these areas needed to have signs indicating you were entering one of these zones and exiting one of these zones. So the signs are not there, and they were running very, very late in implementing this law and the signs. Stephanie, back to something about these obligations for haulage companies. Basically, they are all compliant, so it didn't really lead to supply problems for the product. Now, from a tire point of view, it didn't change anything, neither in our sales outlets nor in our sales volumes. We continue to sell tires in the same way as usual. Now, the change comes from the chains and the socks, because until now, we were not selling a lot of these. To give you a figure, we increased our sales volumes by 40% in October, just in October, and we haven't finished now. We'll see what happens by the end of the winter. So this has led us, therefore, to change the November structure for these socks and chains, because it's a product that was not really much referenced on our shelves. We just helped the customers out sporadically when they needed it. Now we really have to strengthen this. So first of all, we had to do some tests with the socks and chains manufacturers to be able to reference more wider reaching ranges of product and different prices as well, and also to look at how practical it was to put these chains on. It's not easy on a passenger car. I don't know if you tried before. Usually it's hard for us the first time, and also on a truck or lorry, it's very, very complicated. So we met a lot of product manufacturers. We set up references of new products on our ranges so as to meet all different types of demands for people who are used to using chains and those who are just meeting the minimum legal compliance. And then we looked at what was easy to assemble or not. And also, when we were preparing this roundtable, we talked about this decree. In spite of everything, wasn't that well welcomed by the haulage companies. No, really. They were not too happy to see this thing occurring. However, we have a training role to carry out here. Our concern is the safety of our Euromaster drivers, so I think this law is making sense, and it's going to help with road safety. We explain this decree a lot to our customers, whether it be for light vehicles or trucks and lorries. Then also many of these transport companies really raise the issue of these chains because the tires, they've already got good tires, and just this is normal, good common sense. Almost all of the tires are 3 PMSF, but this new obligation to have on board the truck these chains or socks, it was really, really something new and tough for the transport companies. So we saw the decree is there. Now, right now, the sanctions have not yet been applied. These fines. Now, we understood why there are no fines that are applied yet. Now, unfortunately, the message has been scrambled, and some of the users have understood that the law has been forgotten. No, the law still exists and is applicable. The punishments or the fines will not be applied this year, and the government has committed to educating people more about this. And now here we are, mid-November. We haven't seen anything about education by the government. The syndicate on one hand, and the members on the other hand that have done training or trying to educate the users to the best manner possible. And also upstream, just to be able to tell some users that they need to think about what types of tires they're going to have installed on their cars or on their vehicles when the replacement needs to be done. So we're going to start this in January 2000. We started this in January 2021. Also, there's a bit of a reserve here to apply here. The prefects are also allowed to use temporary ad hoc measures, and also they could use ad hoc measures of fines as well. Now, we don't know how this is going to work. If tomorrow there's a big snowfall and in a given French region, we know that we'll have plenty of difficulties delivering tires because the delivery trucks will be stuck as well. And this is kind of a strange thing. We feel like the law has been designed by people who didn't really use this live in this type of region. On the 1st of November 2022, we will have these fines that will be activated, 135 euros for non-equipped cars or vehicles. Another two things. The main punishment is to have an accident. At least material equipment, or even more serious than that, could happen. Also, we're wondering about the way the insurance companies are going to react. This year, the insurance companies are going to maintain insurance for these vehicles. Now, if we look at what happens in the neighboring countries, in Switzerland or Germany, for example. So should there be equipment and it's not equipped on a vehicle, it's not equipped, the insurance will not cover it, and this is a very important point.
Also, we ought to talk about the responsibility or the liability of company managers. Yes, definitely. Let me react to what you've just said, Dominique. If there's a lack of sanctions, it doesn't mean there's a lack of obligation. The law is very, very clear. The law has been voted. So we now have to apply the law and assume responsibility for what we do. So driving in a zone where the mountain law is implemented means you're not complying with the law. Having said that, it's a choice. Everybody chooses whether to comply or not with the law. We've contacted a certain number of insurance companies as well to see what their standpoint is. For the moment, it's all a bit vague. When we ask them to give us specific answers, we are told that vehicles will still be insured. But once we start saying, but what happens in the case of an accident with a third party who is injured or who dies, then we sense that the insurance companies start to think that the mountain law actually is of great interest. So I think we need to be cautious on this subject. Also, let me stress that we also work with professional clients, vehicle fleets or heavy-duty vehicles. And for the light vehicles, the employer specifically has the obligation to give to the driver a vehicle that is in line with the law. So we've seen a certain number of drivers come and see us in our centres, and this began to happen at the beginning of November. These are the professional fleet drivers who started to come and visit us because they have this obligation. The professional fleets won't take any risks. They'll make sure they comply with the law, and so as a result, their drivers have to drive with a compliant vehicle. Just a point I'd like to refer back to, you haven't mentioned it very much so far. We've been talking about tyres for haulage firms, saying it doesn't make too much difference. But what about removable equipment? Do you know what the excess cost is going to be? Well, currently, in the range of chains or snow socks that we at Euromaster sell, for the snow chains, the price amounts to 200 to 250 euros for two pairs of chains. For the socks, it's about 120, 150 euros. So basically, when you've got a truck to equip, it's not very nice expense, but it's not too expensive. But once we talk about a fleet of big haulage vehicles with over 5,000 vehicles, for example, if you start to do the calculation, it's a bit of a major investment. I have a question maybe for both of you. I don't know which one of you will want to answer it. Concerning training, does it require extra training or changes to the training that you provide to haulage companies or to their drivers? As you said, it's not always easy to put these tyre socks or chains on when you're on the roadside. Let me reveal that when we prepared this program, Elodie, and you mentioned this question, I suddenly thought I'd love to hire you in my team because we actually hadn't thought of this. So when we performed the tests, we did tests with different Euromaster centre managers, and they're familiar with the heavy-duty sector, and they did the test, but they're not drivers. And it's very true that even if we've listed the most straightforward ranges for sale, it's very true next winter we need to get organised so that we can also organise training sessions, organise safety and security days for all of the light vehicle owners, and maybe we should help our haulage companies learn how to fit their chains. Great idea. Yes, and it's easier to be in contact with people who know that they're involved in road safety from a day-to-day basis. We, for example, have provided a lot of information for the general public because we felt it was necessary. But you're very right. We can also remind haulage firms and the drivers exactly how to go about fitting the chains, and the fact that this law is important for mobility, for their safety in general. Next, I have one last question. We've seen that the introduction phase has all been quite complex. Sometimes the communication has been a bit complicated. At Euromaster, I know that you use certain tools and devices to provide support to the haulage firms. Can you tell me about it? Yes, of course. The Syndicate for Tyre Professionals like us has communicated a great deal and very quickly because this law is important. We knew that it was going to come into play very quickly, so we needed to explain to tyre users what they needed to do. And when we looked at the maps of the different départements covered, for some it's yes, for some it's no, and sometimes you've got the whole département that is covered by the law, others where only certain communities or communes are covered. Not everybody goes onto the prefecture site to download the new law and to read it. So we've organised an internet module. We've set up a site called law/mountain.fr. You enter your postal code, and that way you know whether you have to abide by the mountain law or not. So we were delighted to do this job and to share all of the information with internet users. We want all drivers and haulage firms to be able to benefit from the information. It's very complicated even so, because you've got some départements that are very much concerned by this mountain law, apart from a couple of roads. Motorways, for example, or highways are not it's not relevant to them because these roads have to be cleared of snow on a regular basis. There are certain départements as well that have excluded the very busy roads in their département. So I repeat, the situation is very complex. Unfortunately, there are numerous tools that will enable drivers to understand this. Because imagine you need to travel across France tomorrow. It's going to be a lot more complex. Yes, but do you think that over the next few years there will be more signage? Do you think there'll be more changes, additional departments that will be involved? Well, we talked about the surrounding countries, the neighboring countries. They've made choices that are much more drastic than the choice that we've made. We have a solution that is quite a limited solution, but I believe things will evolve. Maybe this will be related to the standpoint that different insurance companies adopt in the future. Also, I think we can consider that if we have a very harsh winter, that might also have an impact on the public authorities that might feel that they've got to harden or extend the rules further. But let me just say that we're monitoring this very, very closely. And I have no doubt at all as to the fact that this law will change. It will evolve over the next few years. And drivers' attitudes and behaviours. Because, of course, we've said the subject here is heavy-duty vehicles, but it does mean that standard vehicle drivers are going to have to show an interest in this subject. Four Seasons tyres are now being bought more and more by ordinary car owners. So when we see these sales of Four Season tyres for cars being ramped up, we understand that all of our customers nowadays, they want to drive safely. Let me just stress as well that the winter weather conditions aren't just something that you see in the mountains, but when you're talking about roads in winter and how to drive safely, it's very important to have tyres where the pressure is the right pressure. It's true for light vehicles, it's true for heavy-duty vehicles. You need to pay attention to the depth of the tread on your tyre. If you've got a smooth tyre in winter, it's not going to protect you at all. And think of lighting as well. Think of air conditioning or heating, and also think of your windscreen wipers. That's what driving safely is all about. The law talks about tyres, but that's not the only thing that enables you to drive safely. Just a few words to conclude. This law hasn't received the warmest of welcomes, but it is a very good thing for road safety. Yes, I'm pretty much convinced of this. I can remember, for example, that time and time again we've seen these pictures of motorways that are blocked because there's too much snow. And when I see a motorway that is closed, I don't incriminate anybody, but I say, hey, if there's an emergency and if ambulances need to go along the road, they're not going to be able to. So this law at least makes it possible to overcome this kind of spectacular traffic jam, and I think it's a very good thing. We're enhancing everybody's individual safety. Yes, I would argue that this law hasn't been explained sufficiently in the media, and there have been orders and counter-orders, information that in the end wasn't true. So it's made it complicated for everybody to understand this new law, including for professionals. We've had to sort through the wood from the trees, as we say, and it's even worse for the general public. But the one thing that is resolutely clear is that in October, the weather conditions have evolved, and the general public, thanks to the press, now know that there are new ways of driving safely in the winter. So I'd say it's up to us to decide whether we see the glass half full or half empty. Things are progressing. Okay, thank you for your conclusion. Thank you also for both of you for these discussions, and thank you to all of you for being present here. Enjoy the trade fair. This subject will be broadcast on YouTube and, like all of the other subjects, on the Solutrans site. Thank you very much. Thank you, Elodie.